questions.
Welcome, Yamhill County, to Speaking Frankly. I'm your host, Howie Harkema, and our tagline is, "And how we doin'?" Today we're blessed to have the president and CEO of Juliette's House, Russell Mark. Thank you, Russell.
So glad to be here, Howard. Thank you.
We're so glad to have you on Speaking Frankly. Again, you were on with another panel, but we didn't get to cover all of the subjects, so I'm really glad to have you return.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
So for those who don't know what Juliette's House, would you describe what Juliette's House is?
Absolutely. We are a child abuse intervention center, which is kind of a fancy name for an organization that works with kids who are believed to be victims of child abuse or neglect. In other parts of the country, you may hear them called CACs, Child Advocacy Centers. In Oregon, we are called CAICs. There are 22 of us in this in the state, and only 7 of us are actually accredited through the National Children's Alliance out of Washington, D.C. So we're very fortunate to have that level of accreditation. We use a medical model at Juliette's House, which means when a child comes to us, either by referral from law enforcement or Child Protective Services, this is a child that has been profiled as having been neglected or abused. Our approach is, first of all, to not in any way re-traumatize this child.
Of course.
We don't know what has happened to them, and part of what our job is to find out what's going on with this child, what's actually happened. And so the very nature of the way Juliette's House, from the moment you pull into the parking lot, it looks like your grandmother's house. It's bright yellow, white trim, beautiful landscaping. It feels safe.
Yes.
So when you walk in the door, you feel like it's okay. We have stuffed animals everywhere. And in that process, we do medical assessments to find out is anything medically going on with the child. And we do what's called a forensic interview, which is really a very in-depth discussion with the child, trying to help them articulate what has happened. Sometimes we have very young children, 3, 4 years old, that language is just not there yet. But our team of experts are absolutely amazing working with the kids. And at the same time, we're also working with the non-offending family members. So it may be another parent, it may be an aunt, an uncle, a grandparent that has brought the child in. And in that process, we try to find out what's going on. And then out of that, create a path forward for that child to heal, for the family to heal, to access other services in the community.
So, are you a nonprofit?
Absolutely. We are a 501c3. We've been around since 1997. Next year's our 20th anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
It's hard to believe. And I can only say that as I've gotten to know the organization, I've been there, well, technically a year now. I've worked with the organization, started as a consultant, and then became the interim executive and became the chief operating officer, or the chief executive in April. I am amazed at the community support from the very creation of this of Juliette's House. It literally sprung up from the grassroots. Our founders were school counselors and teachers, and the DA, Brad Berry, who was assistant DA at the time, was very instrumental in helping to create Juliette's House. We've had attorneys and just people throughout, and business leaders in the community that helped create Juliette's House, and have continued to be involved with the organization as it has continued to grow and flourish. To this day, I am amazed at the variety of people that are so invested in what we do.
Well, it's an amazing place, and we hear nothing but good things.
Well, that's good, because that's why we exist. We exist to bring hope and help. That's kind of our unwritten motto, because really that's what this is about. We have one point in time to work with these children.
That's right.
to try to make a difference and to try to steer these families into a healthier way of living, helping families to learn how to communicate better, how to protect their child, because we know a child who has been abused once is far more at risk of being abused again. And not only that, but we also work to create a safer community,
Right.
which is the other part of what we do at Juliette's house.
So, do you guys have a board of directors?
We do have a board, 12 incredible people. We're looking to expand the board, representing various parts of Yamhill County. We also serve Tillamook counties and Polk counties.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and we work in Polk in conjunction with Liberty House out of Salem. So we've got a big geographic area that we work with. But our board is made up of everyday people representing various areas of the county, and we want to expand that. We're hoping to get somebody, for instance, from Grand Ronde to serve on our
that
board.
would be perfect.
We're doing more and more education programs down there, and we think that they certainly need to be
Well, the West
represented.
Valley is really
West
in need.
Valley, absolutely. You know, from the socioeconomics and everything else. Great school system. We work very well with the schools there. But there are more services need there.
Absolutely. So, do you guys have a mission statement or a vision
We
statement?
do. Our mission really is to compassionately assess and to support a child and a family who is believed to be a victim of child abuse
Right.
or neglect. In addition to that, through the years, we have added the insistence on developing prevention programs throughout the community.
Right.
And also to work legislatively for better laws in the state, better support, better training for law enforcement,
Sure.
support for Department of Human Services. We all know they're overworked and underfunded.
Oh, boy.
And they do an incredible job, incredibly hard job, but they do it very, very well and very consistently. And we work with so many other agencies here in the community.
Right. So, could you give a little history about Juliette's house?
Sure. Like I said, we were started about 1995 in terms of development. In fact, we just celebrated our 22nd Celebrate the Children event in October. That was our 22nd one, even though our actual history begins in the summer of '97 when we opened our doors.
Got it.
So it began officially in 1997. We are named for Juliette Barber. Paul and Juliette Barber, who were great benefactors to the community in so many, many different ways, gave the building that we are in. It was an office building. They actually tore most of it down and rebuilt Juliette's house to be an assessment center and give it this whole new facade. And make it really quite usable for what we do day in and day out. Unfortunately, Juliette didn't survive to see the doors open. But in her memory, the founding group of board decided we're going to name this after her. And it's deliberately called a house. We didn't want to call it an organization or an agency or anything like that. We want to continue to give that warm sense of this is a safe place for any child, for any family that walks through our doors.
That's fantastic. So, why is Child Abuse Intervention Center such an important part of the investigative process, and how does it help to avoid re-traumatization of kids who have been abused?
Law enforcement has its own agenda. DHS has its own agenda. They're very focused on, was a crime committed? We're that third party that says, first and foremost, what's happening with the child? So to have a physician, to have a trained forensic interviewer, to have a trained staff that is really looking to surround that child with services, to surround that family and support that family. To some degree, DHS does that, and they do it very well. Ours is at a different level.
More personal level.
Much more personal level. And the idea, as I've said, is the moment they walk through our doors, we want them to feel safe.
Right.
So the very process of walking through the medical exam or walking through the interview. We want them to feel comfortable. We want them to know that we're not there to force a statement out of them. I think years and years ago there was some abuse done in the interviewing process, and the standards have grown enormously high in making sure that nobody's leading this child. Our job is to help that child feel that they can tell their story without any form of retribution.
Right. Are you guys mandatory reporters?
We are absolutely mandatory reporters. And in fact, our philosophy is if you draw breath, you should be a mandatory reporter.
There you go.
But the very process, and we'll talk about this in a minute, we'll show some pictures. The children that come to us, they sometimes walk through the door glazed-eyed or afraid or confused. Their world has been turned upside down. They don't know what's happening, and they need a friendly face. We're very fortunate that we have great relationships with the universities in the area, and we utilize so many of their students as our interns.
Sure.
Psychology students, sociology students. So they see walking through the door somebody who's not old, gray-haired like me.
Yeah, or me.
They're looking like, they're looking at early 20s kids who easily drop down on their knees, embrace them, play games with them, roll around on the floor with them. We have a great game room that the kids can relax in. We have stuffed animals all over the place.
I knew about the plush animals.
We have, the animal. In fact, every child that comes to Juliette's house gets a stuffed animal and a blanket. We have wonderful, there are sororities at the colleges and some of the quilting groups in town that make blankets for each of the kids. So those are some of the small components. And then, of course, there's the whole style of how we work with them. So the medical examination is not overly invasive. And the interview process is pretty warm and easy, and just trying to get the child to talk. Open up and articulate what's happening. We also have a play therapy group or a play therapy area that we don't use in the assessment, but afterwards a child may go into play therapy in order to help them, again, better articulate, to feel more comfortable about what's happening to them.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
Every now and then we have a client that comes in, a kid that comes in that the abuse may have happened years before, and they're just now emotionally dealing with it.
Right.
We had a case not long ago where an aunt called us about a young boy who had been to see us when he was about 11 or 12. Fairly tight-lipped, wasn't able to really deal with stuff. He's now 16. Just explosive temper, acting out. The family didn't know what to do. The aunt called us and said, we're desperate. We can't get him into therapy, and nobody wants to talk to us. And we said, hold on, let's see what we can do. And we were able to get that boy into counseling. We were able to get the family into counseling. He was just now, probably because of puberty and some other things in his life, starting to feel the emotional trauma of what had happened to him.
Sure.
And I'm so happy that our team was able to help them get the therapy, the help that he needed. The backstory that we heard not long ago, he's doing quite well. Awesome. He's back in school, and his grades are coming back up. He's able to be with his family. That's the kind of work that we do.
Well, that's a success story.
Absolutely, it's a success story.
Because a lot of our teenagers at 16 still don't know how to give out the information to an adult.
Absolutely. A horrible statistic is to know that in this country we spend over $150 billion a year in treating the results of untreated child trauma.
Exactly.
When you look at drug abuse and dropout and other substance abuse, chronic disease, depression,
homelessness,
it's an enormous list, and you never know when that's going to hit.
That's right.
A friend of mine who's a psychologist says if you've been traumatized, no matter how hard you try to fight against it and not by not dealing with it,
Right.
it will ooze out somewhere in your life at some point.
Well, it can ruin relationships.
Absolutely. I was interested. It was interesting to me. Not long ago, I was back home in Houston visiting my mom and the rest of my family, and I had dinner with an old friend of mine that I knew had a fairly rough life growing up, and he was asking me about what I did now. So I told him. He said, well, you know, my dad smacked me around quite a bit when I was growing up, but I'm fine. It never affected me. And I'm looking at him, and he was on his fourth cocktail. He'd been married 3 times. 2 of his children wouldn't have anything to do with him. And we had a pretty soul-searching conversation after that.
I bet you did.
And the thing that we feel very strongly about, it is never, never too late to get help.
Absolutely.
But you've got to be at a point in your life that you're finally ready to deal with
To
it.
surrender.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 12-step programs, whatever it may be that you need that's going to help you face those demons, if you will, in your life, it's critically important. And the first thing to learn is what happened to you back there doesn't have to keep hurting you now.
That's right. So how are you guys funded?
Oh, a variety of ways. We have some very generous funding from the state. There is a program set up by the state. We call it CAMI. It's the Crime Victims Program. So if a drug dealer is caught and he's got a Maserati and a speedboat and everything else, they get auctioned off and that money goes into this fund.
Awesome.
And that money comes back and it's used to help all kinds of crime victims.
Sure.
So we get a nice sized grant out of that to work with us. The Department of Justice has a very similar program. And so we get some funding from that. That helps. Most of that goes to our clinical services, our assessment group. We have some other great foundations that support us. The Oregon Community Foundation has been a great supporter. Quite a few other smaller groups. First Federal here in town gives us a grant. And then we have just a tremendous number of individual donors that support us in a variety of ways. Some write checks. Some do little fundraisers for us. We had a fun time over at Flag and Wire recently. They had a latte throwdown. But on their own, they decided to make it a fundraiser for Juliette's house. And we did really well for just a few hours of having fun. And there are about 70 people there. And for me, what's really gratifying is not only is it a nice little fundraiser for us, but it's a new platform with a new audience for us to talk about what we do and why people should invest time or energy or resources in what we do. One of the new projects that I've just begun work on is a presentation to the business community of why you need to be invested in what we do so that we can get in and help these kids either prevent abuse from ever happening, help young families get the parenting support they need. We've got a great relationship with the Family Place and with Lutheran Community Services and County Family and Youth. I mean, Henderson House, so many of them we work closely with so that we can create this network, this safety net in our community so that no family falls through.
So important.
It's critically important, and no one of us can do it alone.
Of course, it takes a village.
It does take a village. And I feel so fortunate that my colleagues at these other organizations feel exactly the same way I do, that we have to work together. We work very closely with Yamhill Community Cares, other groups, churches throughout the community. We really want to create a safety net. My goal and my job is to help this become one of the safest communities in the country to raise a child.
And that's what it should be.
And that's what it should be.
And this community is so compassionate and passionate about this issue.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
So who are some of your local partnerships with?
Well, like I mentioned, we work with a Family Place, Lutheran Community Services,
YCAP?
YCAP. If one of our families needs help with food issues or transportation, we work with Head Start. We work with Grand Ronde. And certainly the law enforcement, the DA's office, DHS. And I have to put a plug in for those folks. because we do work so closely with them. We are so fortunate that we have law enforcement throughout the county that is so dedicated
Yes.
to this work. The extra training that they put detectives through, the passion that the detectives bring to this issue, and as I've said, DHS are unsung heroes for all they do, everything from small intercessions to huge complex cases.
And they have
that
huge
work with.
caseloads.
Oh, they do. And some families need so much help. I mean, years of help. And we're right there with them trying to help these families because sadly, we sometimes have seen multiple generations of a family.
Right.
Which in a 20-year, almost 20-year history is sad. I mean, I can't say it's a failure, but at the same time, we don't want to see that. We want these families, if they come to us, they have to see us one time and move on and get the support that they need. But we also know that so many of these families, they go back into an environment where there may be drug abuse or whatever it may be, sexual abuse, and they fall into that abyss again.
Right.
The good news is we're here. We're not going anywhere.
Right.
These other agencies aren't going anywhere. And if it takes multiple generations to break that cycle of abuse, we will be here.
Well, we need to rid ourselves of the generational dysfunctionality of families.
Absolutely.
And you guys are in the forefront
Yeah.
of doing that very thing. Do you guys need volunteers?
Absolutely. We always need volunteers. And again, we are so fortunate. I mean, we have, our building's 20 years old. We need paint help, and we need, we're getting ready for a new major project, building project. We have a front porch on Juliette's house that has really never been used that much. We want to enclose that and turn it into a private waiting room for families. We have a lot more activity coming in and out of the building throughout the day now. And right now our families just sit there in the lobby, and that's not comfortable.
No.
It's not comfortable for them or for us. So to have a private waiting room, that's something we want. We've got a builder we're working with here in town that hopefully we can get all of that donated.
Awesome.
All the
That's
building
exactly
supplies.
what needs to
And
happen.
that's what needs to happen. We have committees that we're always looking for help with. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities. They're not opportunities. Frequently we get calls for people who say, oh, well, I really want to work with the kids. And because we're dealing with law enforcement issues and medical health, privacy issues,
Right.
they can't really do that.
Yeah.
But there are ways that you can help Juliette's house do a better job with the kids.
Yeah, with HIPAA and those restrictions, there's
Absolutely.
a lot.
Absolutely.
So we're going to have to jump ahead because we're already 23 minutes
Oh,
in.
my gosh.
I know. So would you walk us through the process? And Paul, would you bring up the next slide, please?
So that's the front of Juliette's house, and when you walk in, you can see it's a very comfortable, warm, inviting environment. We always have flowers blooming, it seems like. Even in the strange weather we've had recently, some of our rhododendrons have been blooming.
Re-blooming, yeah.
Re-blooming early. But it's a very nice, I have to thank Cascadia Landscaping for maintaining the lawn for us free of charge.
Wow.
Those are great folks over there. We love them. But you walk through the front door. We have a very simple lobby. You can move to the next slide. Oh, there's another picture. That's our April. April is another big month. That's the National Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month.
Right.
And this year it's going to be bigger than ever in awareness.
Pinwheels everywhere.
Pinwheels everywhere. So there's a lobby. You can see it's a very simple sort of lobby, but people walk in. You can see some of the stuffed animals that we have scattered throughout the building. And they come in, and our interviewer and the Family Support Services team meet them as they walk in the door, help them feel comfortable. There's some paperwork that has to be filled out. But we begin immediately trying to help them feel comfortable and safe, and we talk to them about what to expect throughout the day. Some assessments are 2 hours long. Some can be 6 hours long, depending on the complication, or frequently we see siblings. So instead of bringing them back in 2 or 3 different times, we want to do it all at one time and talk to them all at one time. So We start with the medical assessment. This is our medical exam room. You can see it's very friendly. You can't really tell from the picture, but those are Big Bird feet on the exam table. And we've got colorful little smocks, gowns for the kids to wear. And again, it's a non-invasive medical exam, sort of a wellness exam approach. And during that process, we talk to them and we begin to build a rapport,
Sure.
help them relax and to feel safe, and that we're not there to harm them, we're not there to do anything, but to help them talk about what happened.
It's very inviting.
It is, and that's the whole approach. Help it be inviting, help them feel safe. Then there's the interview process. This is one of our interview rooms. There's a big mirror that the interviewer and the child sit in front of. The microphone's embedded in the counter, so it's easy to pick up the conversation. Mm-hmm. And behind that mirror is an observation room, which you can turn to the next slide. You can see it's a typical electronics. You can see the camera there with the big hood over it, so it's very focused and light sensitive. But we do record those interviews. We don't record the medical exams.
Of course.
But in the observation room, there may be a DHS worker, a law enforcement agent that is a detective that's on this particular case, listening to the exam, and then they'll actually observe the forensic interview as it takes place.
Do they go back to the interview later and sometimes?
Absolutely, because if there's enough information that warrants moving on to a trial, mm-hmm. We want people to verify what happened. We do record it. We take that part of our job very seriously. This is how we work with the DA. We become pretty sophisticated in how they access those recordings. It's all done in a cloud so that they're not DVDs floating all over the community. That's really important to us, that the privacy of this child and what's happened to them is as protected as possible.
And the information is secure.
The information is absolutely secure. That's our play therapy room. Frequently, a child, our doctor and interviewer will recommend that a child go into play therapy for a while. This is a kind of a shorter therapy process, mm-hmm. helping them, again, to open up and to articulate, communicate better. We have a great relationship with Lutheran Community Services, who uses college interns who are learning play therapy.
Sure.
And then Juliette's House is also working on a program where hopefully by the first of the year, we will be able to have established clinicians who want to use play therapy coming in and using this space. All of these toys have been donated. The Federal Corrections down in Sheridan created the wooden stove and refrigerator, and we've had them for years. They're incredibly well built. But that was one of the things that they gave us.
Yeah. We've got about a minute. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let me tell you, there's a number of ways. We're always needing support. We're always needing help. There's the plaques at the front door. One of the easiest ways that people can support us, of course, is through a donation.
Sure.
You can text Stop Abuse at 91999. You can go to our website, juliettshouse.org. You can mail it to us. You can give us a call. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk to you. If you're interested in volunteering, there are ways that you can do that. The other thing is to become educated about what does abuse look like. We have some wonderful prevention programs. You can go to our website, see the variety of programs. We have gone from one program a year ago to 5 programs now for different audiences.
Sure.
Everything from if you're a new parent with a preschooler, to kids in school. We're developing new programs for middle schoolers and high schoolers. And then we have a program called Darkness to Light for any adult that works with a child, or if you're a parent and want to learn about abuse, we will teach you.
Russell, thank you so much for being on today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Howie. Appreciate it.
And if you want to get involved at Juliette's House, go to their website, go to their Facebook page, make a phone call. Thank you for supporting them over 20 years.
We're very grateful.
And thank you for watching.